Have you ever been betrayed by the one person who was supposed to protect you no matter what? I'm talking about the kind of betrayal that cuts so deep, it changes who you are forever. When I was 15 years old, my father looked me in the eyes during the worst storm of the year and said 2 words that shattered my entire world. Get out. He believed I was a thief. He believed I was on drugs. He believed every shocking lie my sister had told him. And the truth? I was completely innocent. I couldn't believe my own father would throw me out like garbage without even asking for my side of the story. I was humiliated, shamed, and left to freeze in the rain with nothing but a backpack and the clothes on my back. But here's what my sister didn't count on. That moment of betrayal, that cruel, get out, was the beginning of her downfall. She thought she had won. She thought she had finally gotten rid of me. She had no idea that karma was already watching, that justice was already on its way, and that everything she did in the dark was about to be exposed in the light. This is the story of how I survived the unthinkable, uncovered a conspiracy that went deeper than I ever imagined, and watched the people who backstabbed me face the payback they deserved. What happened next? Well, let me tell you, it's more shocking than you could ever believe. I couldn't believe what was happening. There I was, 15 years old, standing in the middle of a raging thunderstorm with nothing but a backpack and the clothes on my back. My father, the man who was supposed to protect me, had just thrown me out like I was garbage. He looked at me with disgust, yelling that I was a thief, a drug addict, a disgrace to the family. The shocking part? Every single word coming out of his mouth was a lie. I had never stolen a dime, never touched any drugs, but somehow, he believed I had backstabbed him in the worst possible way. The rain was coming down so hard I could barely see 2 feet in front of me. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. And all I kept thinking was, how did I end up here? Just that morning, everything seemed fine. Well, as fine as things could be in our broken home. But then Karen, my perfect golden child sister, came running to our father with evidence that I had been stealing money and hiding pills. The truth didn't matter to him. He didn't ask for my side. He didn't even hesitate. He just pointed at the door and said, "Get out." I stood there in that storm, feeling humiliated and shamed, watching the only home I'd ever known disappear behind sheets of rain. Part of me wanted to scream, to bang on that door until he listened. But deep down, I knew he wouldn't. My dignity was all I had left, and I wasn't going to beg someone who had already decided I was worthless. So I started walking. Little did I know, in just 3 hours, everything was about to change, and my father's cruel decision would come back to haunt him in ways he never imagined. 3 hours. That's all it took for my father's world to start crumbling. While I was out there fighting for my life in that freezing storm, he was probably sitting in his warm living room, convinced he had done the right thing. Karen was likely by his side, playing the concerned daughter, pretending to comfort him. But then the phone rang, and I can only imagine the look on his face when he heard the voice on the other end. It was the police. Suddenly, his tough love decision didn't look so righteous anymore. You see, when you throw a 15-year-old girl out into a dangerous storm, people notice. Someone had called the authorities, and now my father had to explain himself. I couldn't believe karma worked that fast. The betrayal he thought he was punishing me for, it was about to blow up in his face. The officers started asking questions, hard questions. Where was his daughter? Why was she outside in this weather? Did he understand that what he did could be considered child abandonment? The family drama he thought he could sweep under the rug was now an official case. I wasn't there to see it, but I later found out he tried to justify everything. He told them about the stolen money, the drugs, the so-called proof Karen had given him. But here's the thing about the truth. It has a way of coming out. And those officers weren't just going to take his word for it. They were going to investigate. They were going to dig. And what they would eventually uncover would be more shocking than anyone could have predicted. Justice was already setting its wheels in motion, even if none of us knew it yet. 13 years. That's how long it took for my father to reach out. I was living in Seattle now, building a life I never thought I'd have, a career I loved, a cozy apartment with a view of the city, and a peace I had fought so hard to find. Then one Tuesday morning, I opened my mailbox and found a letter with handwriting I hadn't seen in over a decade. My hands started trembling before I even opened it. I couldn't believe he had the nerve to contact me after everything he'd done. After throwing me out like I was nothing. After choosing to believe lies over his own daughter. The letter was short, but every word hit me like a punch to the gut. He said he was sick, dying actually. Some illness had taken over his body, and the doctors weren't giving him much time. He wrote that he'd made terrible mistakes, that he had been lied to, and that he needed to see me one last time to ask for forgiveness. Forgiveness. The word felt almost insulting. This was the same man who had humiliated me, shamed me in front of the whole family, and left me to freeze in a storm. Now he wanted payback for his guilty conscience? Now he wanted peace? I sat there for hours, just staring at that piece of paper. Part of me wanted to tear it up and forget it ever existed. But another part, the part that had spent years in therapy, reclaiming my self-worth and my dignity, knew that this moment was coming eventually. The universe has a funny way of bringing things full circle. Before I could decide what to do, I realized something important. To understand whether I could forgive him, I needed to remember exactly how we got here. And that meant going back to the beginning, back to the night everything fell apart, and the sister who made sure it did. Let me tell you about my sister Megan. To the outside world, she was the golden child. Straight A's, perfect manners, always saying the right thing at the right time. Our relatives would gush about how wonderful she was, how lucky our father was to have such a daughter. But behind closed doors, she was a master manipulator. I couldn't believe how blind everyone was to the truth. While I was just trying to survive in our broken home, Megan was plotting something that would destroy my entire life. She didn't just want to be the favorite. She wanted me completely out of the picture. The betrayal was calculated down to the smallest detail. She planted $800 in cash inside my backpack, hidden between my school books. Then she slipped prescription pill bottles into my dresser drawer. Bottles that didn't even have my name on them. But the most shocking part? She created fake text messages on a burner phone. Conversations that made it look like I was selling drugs to kids at school. Every piece of evidence pointed straight at me. She had backstabbed me in a way I never saw coming, and she did it all with a smile on her face. When she presented everything to our father, she played the concerned sister perfectly. Crocodile tears, shaky voice, the whole performance. Daddy, I didn't want to believe it either, but look what I found. She knew exactly which buttons to push. Our father, still grieving and emotionally wrecked, didn't question a single thing. He just saw the money, the pills, the messages, and his mind was made up. I was guilty. No trial, no defense, no chance to explain. Megan had executed her vengeance against me for crimes I never committed, and the real question was why. What could possibly make a sister do something so evil? The answer, as I would later discover, was hiding in a document I didn't even know existed. Everything changed when my mother died. She was the glue that held our family together, the one person who saw through Megan's act and always made sure I was protected. Cancer took her when I was 13, and I swear, the day she closed her eyes was the day our home turned into a battlefield. My father completely collapsed. He stopped going to work, stopped talking, stopped being a father. He would just sit in his chair for hours, staring at nothing, like his soul had left his body along with hers. The family drama that followed was something I wouldn't wish on anyone. Megan saw an opportunity, and she took it. While I was grieving and trying to keep my grades up, she swooped in and became Daddy's little caretaker. She cooked his meals, managed the bills, whispered in his ear every single day. Slowly but surely, she started poisoning him against me. Little comments here and there. Lydia didn't do her chores again. Lydia was out late. Who knows where she was? Lydia doesn't seem to care about this family. I couldn't believe how quickly he started looking at me differently. The truth is, I was just a kid trying to survive. But Megan made sure he saw me as the problem. The sabotage was subtle at first, but it got worse over time. Money would go missing, and somehow I'd get blamed. Things would break around the house, and Megan would hint that I did it. She was reclaiming the family for herself, one lie at a time. My father, too broken to think clearly, just accepted whatever she told him. I felt humiliated and shamed in my own home, like I was a stranger intruding on their perfect little world. But Megan wasn't doing all this just because she hated me. No, there was something much bigger at play, something worth a lot of money, and I had no idea I was standing right in the middle of it. Here's the shocking truth I didn't discover until years later. My mother, before she passed, had set up a trust fund for me. $50,000, saved up over her entire life, meant to help me go to college and start my future. She knew, somehow she knew, that I would need protection after she was gone. The money was locked away until I turned 18, and only I could access it. Unless, of course, something happened to me. Unless I was declared mentally unstable or incapable of managing my own affairs. And guess who would become the trustee if that happened? My father, with Megan whispering in his ear. I couldn't believe it when I finally put the pieces together. The betrayal wasn't just about jealousy or sibling rivalry. It was about cold, hard cash. Megan's plan was diabolical. If she could make it look like I was a drug addict, a thief, a troubled teenager beyond saving, the courts could declare me incompetent. I'd be sent to some facility, locked away, and the trust would fall into my father's hands, which really meant Megan's hands. She wasn't just trying to get rid of me. She was trying to steal my future, my mother's last gift to me. The vengeance she had planned was all about the money. Everything suddenly made sense. The planted cash, the pills, the fake messages, it was all designed to build a case against me. She needed evidence that I was out of control, that I couldn't be trusted, that I was a danger to myself. That's why she escalated things so quickly. She didn't just want me kicked out of the house. She wanted me locked up, labeled, and erased. My own sister had backstabbed me for $50,000. But karma has a way of catching up with people. And Megan's perfect little scheme was about to hit an obstacle she never expected. Starting with a freezing road and a stranger who would change everything. When my father slammed that door behind me, I had only one thought. Grandma. She lived about 7 miles away, on the other side of town, and she was the only person left who truly loved me. So I started walking. The rain was coming down in sheets, the wind was cutting right through my thin jacket, and I could barely feel my fingers anymore. But I kept moving, one foot in front of the other. I told myself I just had to make it to her house, and everything would be okay. I couldn't believe my own father had put me in this situation, but I refused to give up. My dignity wouldn't let me. About 4 miles in, my body started to betray me. My legs felt like they were filled with cement. My teeth were chattering so hard I thought they might crack. The cold had seeped into my bones, and no matter how fast I tried to walk, I couldn't warm up. The truth is, I was going into hypothermia, but I didn't know it at the time. All I knew was that the world was getting blurry. My thoughts were getting foggy, and the road ahead seemed to stretch on forever. I was shamed and humiliated, thrown out like trash, and now I was literally fighting for my life. I don't remember falling. One moment I was walking, and the next, I was on the ground, face pressed against the wet asphalt. My body just gave out. The storm was raging all around me, and I was completely alone. I remember thinking, this is it. This is how it ends. 15 years old, lying in the middle of nowhere, because my family had decided I wasn't worth keeping. But justice works in mysterious ways, because just when I thought nobody in the world cared whether I lived or died, a pair of headlights cut through the darkness, and the woman behind them was about to become my guardian angel. Her name was Evelyn Porter, and she was exactly the right person at exactly the right moment. She was driving home from a late shift when her headlights caught something on the side of the road. Me, collapsed and barely breathing. Most people would have just called 911 and kept driving. But Evelyn wasn't most people. She pulled over, wrapped me in blankets from her trunk, and held me in her arms until the ambulance arrived. I couldn't believe a complete stranger would show me more kindness in 5 minutes than my own family had shown me in years. Karma, I guess, was already starting to work in my favor. Here's where the story takes a turn that feels almost like fate. Evelyn wasn't just some random Good Samaritan. She was a retired veteran of Child Protective Services, 30 years of experience spotting abuse, neglect, and family drama that most people would never imagine. The moment she saw me, soaking wet, freezing, with nothing but a backpack, she knew something was very wrong. She stayed with me at the hospital, asked me gentle questions, and when I finally told her the truth about what happened, her expression changed. I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. Someone who believed me. Evelyn made phone calls that night. Important phone calls. She knew exactly who to contact, what to say, and how to make sure I wouldn't fall through the cracks. By the time the doctors had stabilized me, there were already CPS workers on their way. Evelyn held my hand and told me, "You're not going back there, sweetheart. Not tonight. Not ever, unless it's safe." For the first time in months, I felt something I had almost forgotten. Hope. I was reclaiming my life, one breath at a time. But the real payback was just beginning, because my father and Megan were about to walk into that hospital expecting a scared little girl. What they found instead would shock them to their core. My father showed up at that hospital thinking he was still in control. I can picture it perfectly. Him walking through those doors with Megan by his side, ready to play the worried parent, expecting to find his broken daughter begging to come home. Maybe he thought a night in the storm had taught me a lesson. Maybe he thought I'd apologize for things I never did. But the moment he stepped into that waiting room, the look on his face told me everything. He wasn't prepared for what he found. Instead of a scared little girl, he walked straight into a room full of CPS workers, police officers, and hospital staff, all of them waiting with very hard questions. I couldn't believe the shift in power. Just hours ago, he had pointed at the door and told me to get out. Now he was the one being interrogated. Why was your daughter outside in a storm? Where is the evidence of these accusations? Did you give her any chance to defend herself? The family drama he thought he could handle privately was now official business. Officers were taking notes. Social workers were making calls. And Megan, oh Megan, she stood there with her mouth open, realizing for the first time that her perfect little scheme might not go as planned. The betrayal she had orchestrated was about to be exposed. The truth started coming out in pieces. Every lie Megan had told, every piece of evidence she had planted, was now under scrutiny. My father tried to defend his decision, tried to explain why he had thrown me out, but his words sounded hollow even to him. The professionals in that room had seen this kind of thing before. They knew what backstabbing looked like, what family manipulation smelled like, and they weren't buying his story. Justice was no longer just a hope. It was becoming real. But the biggest surprise of that night was still waiting in the wings, because someone else was on her way to that hospital. Someone small, fierce, and absolutely ready to go to war for me. My grandmother Dorothy arrived at that hospital like a force of nature. She was barely 5 feet tall, 72 years old. But when she walked into that room, everyone felt it. She had received a call from Evelyn. Turns out they knew each other from church. And the moment she heard what happened, she got in her car and drove through that storm like nothing could stop her. I couldn't believe the look in her eyes when she saw me in that hospital bed. It wasn't just love. It was fury. Pure, righteous fury. My father had made a terrible mistake, and Grandma Dorothy was about to make sure he paid for it. She didn't yell. She didn't scream. She didn't need to. Grandma walked straight up to my father, looked him dead in the eyes, and said words I'll never forget. "You threw away my granddaughter like she was garbage. You believed lies over your own flesh and blood. That ends tonight." Then she turned to the CPS workers and told them she wanted emergency custody. She had documents ready, proof of her stable home, her finances, her ability to care for me. The betrayal my father had committed gave her all the legal ground she needed. Within hours, a judge signed the papers. I was hers now. The payback was swift and absolute. Grandma made it crystal clear. My father was not to contact me. No calls, no visits, no letters, nothing. She was reclaiming me from the nightmare he had created, and she wasn't going to let anyone hurt me again. I watched my father's face crumble as he realized what he had lost. Megan tried to intervene, tried to play the peacemaker, but Grandma saw right through her. "I know exactly what you are," she told my sister. "And justice is coming for you too." Those words hung in the air like a promise, because the investigation was only getting started. and what they were about to uncover would be more shocking than anyone imagined. The woman assigned to my case was named Rosa Martinez, and let me tell you, she was like a detective in a cardigan. Soft-spoken, patient, but absolutely relentless when it came to finding the truth. She didn't just accept the evidence Megan had presented. She dug deeper. She pulled records, made phone calls, visited places, and asked questions nobody else had thought to ask. I couldn't believe someone was finally fighting for me, treating me like I mattered. Rosa told me once, "Lies always leave a trail, sweetheart. We just have to follow it." And follow it she did, piece by piece, until Megan's entire web of betrayal started to unravel. The first breakthrough came from a bank camera. Remember that $800 Megan planted in my backpack? Rosa traced the serial numbers to a withdrawal made 3 days before I was kicked out. And guess whose face showed up on the ATM security footage? Megan's. She had taken that money herself and hidden it in my bag. Then Rosa checked my school records. Turns out I had been in class during the times those fake text messages were supposedly sent. The shocking evidence kept piling up. Next, she tracked down the burner phone Megan had used to create those fake conversations. The store had receipts. The receipts had a name. And that name led straight back to someone very interesting. The pills were the final piece of the puzzle. Rosa traced those prescription bottles to a young man named Derek, Megan's boyfriend at the time. Turns out Derek was involved in some shady business, scamming people across different states, and those pills were part of his inventory. Megan hadn't just backstabbed me on her own. She had help. Every lie, every planted piece of evidence, now had a paper trail. The vengeance Megan had planned so carefully was falling apart, and karma was about to deliver a blow she never saw coming. But the investigation wasn't over yet, because Derek's crimes went far deeper than anyone expected, and when he got caught, he was ready to talk. Just when I thought the truth couldn't get any more shocking, Rosa uncovered something that blew the whole case wide open. While digging into Derek's background, she found a trail of forged checks that had been written from my father's account over the past 2 years. We're talking about almost $22,000. Slowly drained away without my father ever noticing. The money had gone straight into Derek's pockets, funding his scams and shady deals across multiple states. And who had access to my father's checkbook? Who managed the household finances while he sat broken in his chair? That's right, Megan. The family drama had just turned into full-blown fraud. I couldn't believe my sister had been stealing from our own father, while playing the role of his perfect caretaker. Every time she cooked him dinner or brought him tea, she was also bleeding him dry. The betrayal wasn't just against me anymore. It was against the entire family. She had used his grief, his weakness, his trust, to fund her boyfriend's criminal enterprise. And the sickest part? She was planning to steal my trust fund too. $50,000 from our dead mother, meant for my future, would have disappeared into Derek's schemes if her plan had worked. The vengeance she had tried to take out on me was really just greed wearing a mask. Rosa laid everything out for the authorities. Bank statements, forged signatures, deposit records. Every piece of evidence pointed directly at Megan and Derek. My father, when he finally saw the proof, looked like a man who had been hit by a truck. He had believed every word she said. He had thrown out his own daughter based on her lies. And all along, she was the one backstabbing him. The payback was coming fast now. Derek's criminal past was about to catch up with him in a big way. And when it did, he wasn't going down alone. He was ready to tell the police everything, including every detail of the conspiracy against me. Derek thought he was untouchable. He had been running scams across 4 different states, charming his way into people's lives and wallets, always staying one step ahead of the law. But karma has a long memory and perfect timing. One night, while trying to pull another con in Nevada, he finally slipped up. The police caught him red-handed with fake documents and stolen credit cards. When they ran his name, they found warrants waiting for him, including one connected to my case. The dominoes were starting to fall, and Derek was about to bring down everyone around him, including my dear sister Megan. I couldn't believe how fast he flipped. The moment Derek realized he was facing serious prison time, he started talking. And I mean really talking. He told the investigators everything, How Megan had approached him with the plan, how she wanted to get rid of me so she could control the trust fund, how they planted the money and the pills and created those fake messages together. He even had text conversations saved on his phone, proving that Megan was the mastermind behind the whole betrayal. Every detail of the conspiracy against me was now on record, straight from the mouth of her own accomplice. The truth was finally out in the open, shocking everyone who heard it. My father had to sit through depositions where Derek described exactly how his perfect daughter had manipulated him. Megan had backstabbed not just me, but our entire family, and now there was no hiding it. Justice was closing in from every direction. Derek was going to prison, and Megan was going to face consequences she never imagined possible. But the real payback was still ahead. In a courtroom, where everything would be laid bare for the world to see. And I was ready to watch her perfect mask shatter into 1,000,000 pieces. The day of the court hearing, I walked into that building holding my grandmother's hand. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, from anticipation. For months I had been humiliated and shamed, called a thief and a drug addict by my own family. Now, finally, the truth was going to be spoken out loud, in front of a judge, on the official record. Megan sat across the room, and for the first time ever, she didn't look so perfect. Her eyes were red, her hands were shaking, and that confident smile she always wore was nowhere to be found. The betrayal she had committed was about to be exposed for everyone to see. The evidence was overwhelming. Rosa Martinez presented everything: the ATM footage, the school records, the burner phone receipts, the forged checks, Derek's full confession. Each piece landed like a hammer blow. The judge listened carefully, his face growing darker with every revelation. When it was time to address my father, the judge didn't hold back. He called it what it was: negligence, abandonment, a complete failure to protect his own child. I couldn't believe the words coming from his mouth. Someone in authority was finally saying what I had felt all along. My father sat there, broken, unable to deny any of it. Justice had arrived, but the real payback came when the judge turned to Megan. He described her actions as calculated, cruel, and motivated by greed. He said she had backstabbed her own sister for money, manipulated a grieving father, and showed no remorse. Megan tried to cry, tried to play the victim one last time, but nobody was buying it anymore. The mask had finally cracked. I sat there watching her world collapse, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not happiness, but relief. I was reclaiming my story, my dignity, my self-worth. The vengeance I had dreamed of wasn't about hurting her. It was about the truth finally being told. And now, the consequences were about to hit them harder than they ever imagined. The judge's ruling came down like a hammer of justice. Megan was hit with a restraining order. She couldn't come near me, contact me, or even mention my name on social media. Her criminal charges for fraud and conspiracy were moving forward, and the financial penalties were crushing. All those years of scheming, all that betrayal, and now she was facing the payback she deserved. My grandmother was granted permanent custody of me, which meant I finally had a real home, a safe place where nobody could hurt me. I couldn't believe how completely the tables had turned. The girl who tried to destroy me had destroyed herself instead, but the consequences didn't stop with Megan. My father's reputation crumbled overnight. Word spread through our small town about what he had done, throwing his teenage daughter out into a storm based on lies, never once stopping to question the evidence. People who had respected him for years now crossed the street to avoid him. His job became uncomfortable, his friendships evaporated, and the shame he had tried to put on me landed right back on his own shoulders. Karma doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. He had chosen to believe the wrong daughter, and now he was living with the wreckage of that choice every single day. And then came the final blow. His wife, my stepmother Linda, who had stood by silently while I was humiliated and shamed, filed for divorce. She said she couldn't stay with a man who would abandon his own child. The truth is, I think she was just embarrassed to be associated with the scandal. Either way, my father lost everything. His daughter, his wife, his reputation, his peace of mind. The family drama he had allowed Megan to create had consumed him completely. Meanwhile, I was starting over with Grandma Dorothy, finally free from the nightmare. But healing, I would learn, was a journey, not a destination. And that journey was about to begin. Living with Grandma Dorothy was like learning to breathe again. For the first time in years, I didn't have to watch my back or wonder what trap was waiting for me around the corner. She made sure I had everything I needed. Not just food and shelter, but love, patience, and the space to heal. I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Cynthia Wells. And let me tell you, that woman saved my life. Week after week, we unpacked the betrayal, the trauma, the lies I had been told about myself. Slowly, I started reclaiming my self-worth. I began to understand that what happened wasn't my fault, that I deserved dignity and respect. The girl who had been thrown out like garbage was learning she was worth so much more. High school wasn't easy, but I pushed through. I made real friends, got decent grades, and discovered a passion for design that would eventually become my career. After graduation, I went to community college, then transferred to a university in Seattle. Every step forward felt like justice. Proof that Megan's plan had failed, that I wasn't going to be erased. I worked hard, built my portfolio, and landed a job at a marketing firm that actually valued my creativity. I couldn't believe the life I was building. The same girl who once collapsed on a freezing road was now standing on her own 2 feet, thriving, succeeding. Karma had given me a second chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. And then came Nathan. I met him at a coffee shop of all places. He spilled his latte on my laptop and spent the next hour apologizing while I laughed. He was kind, genuine, and patient with my walls. For a long time, I was afraid to trust anyone. The family drama I had survived made me cautious about letting people in, but Nathan never pushed. He just showed up, consistently, proving that not everyone was going to backstab me. 3 years later, he proposed on the same spot where we met. I said yes. My life had transformed completely, from victim to survivor to someone truly happy. But just when I thought the past was finally behind me, a letter arrived that would shake everything up again. The letter sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I had the courage to open it again. 13 years of silence. And now my father wanted to talk. He was in a nursing home in Ohio, his body failing from a disease that was slowly shutting him down. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible in some places. But the message was clear. He was dying, and he needed to see me one last time. He said he had things to explain, apologies to make, truths to share. Part of me wanted to throw it away and forget it ever existed. But another part, the part that had spent years in therapy working through this exact betrayal, knew I needed closure. I just didn't know what that would look like. Nathan drove me to Ohio. The nursing home smelled like disinfectant and sadness, and my heart was pounding as we walked down those long hallways. When I finally saw my father, I couldn't believe how small he looked. This was the man who had towered over me, who had pointed at the door and told me to get out. Now he was just a fragile old man in a hospital bed, tubes connected to his arms, eyes filled with tears the moment he saw me. "You came," he whispered. "I wasn't sure you would." I sat down beside him, keeping my distance, waiting for him to speak. The truth was about to come out, and I needed to hear every word. He told me everything. How he realized, too late, that Megan had manipulated him. How the guilt had eaten him alive every single day since that night. And then he said something that shocked me. "She tried to visit me here," he said, talking about Megan. "I refused to see her. I told the nurses to never let her in." After all these years, he had finally rejected the daughter who had backstabbed his entire family. It wasn't vengeance. It was just sad. He reached for my hand, his grip weak and trembling. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said. "I just needed you to know how sorry I am." I sat there in silence, feeling the weight of 13 years pressing down on both of us. The question now was simple. Could I let it go? I looked at my father lying in that bed, and I felt something shift inside me. For years, I had carried the weight of his betrayal like a stone in my chest. The anger, the pain, the questions that kept me up at night. Why didn't he believe me? Why didn't he fight for me? But sitting there, watching him struggle to breathe, I realized something important. Holding on to that rage wasn't hurting him. It was hurting me. Forgiveness isn't about saying what someone did was okay. It's about deciding that you're not going to let their actions poison your life anymore. I was reclaiming my peace, my freedom, my future, and that meant letting go. "I forgive you," I said. The words came out quieter than I expected. But they were real. His eyes filled with tears. And for a moment, he couldn't speak. But I wasn't done. "I forgive you, but you need to understand something. What you did almost killed me. You believed lies over your own daughter. You threw me out into a storm and didn't look back. That weight, that guilt, is yours to carry, not mine. I'm not here to make you feel better. I'm here because I needed to say this out loud and finally close this chapter." The truth hung in the air between us, heavy but necessary. I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine just because he was dying. I stayed for another hour. We talked about Mom, about the good memories before everything fell apart. He cried. I cried. And when I finally walked out of that nursing home, I felt lighter than I had in 13 years. Nathan was waiting for me in the car, and when I got in, he just held my hand without saying a word. He understood. The family drama, the betrayal, the karma, the justice. It was all behind me now. I had survived the storm, literally and figuratively. I had found my self-worth, my dignity, my happy ending. Megan had tried to destroy me, but here I was, living proof that she failed. And as we drove away, I knew one thing for certain. My story wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about peace, and I had finally found it. So there it is, my story. From being thrown out into a storm at 15 to finding peace and happiness 13 years later. It wasn't easy. There were nights I didn't think I'd make it. Moments when the betrayal felt too heavy to carry. But I survived. I fought back. And I learned that karma always comes around, even when it takes longer than we'd like. Justice found its way to the people who tried to destroy me. And I found something even more powerful. My self-worth, my dignity, and the life I always deserved. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been backstabbed by someone you trusted completely? Have you ever had a family member lie about you, turn people against you, make you feel like you were the problem when you weren't? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and trust me, this community understands what you've been through. Let's talk about it. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have forgiven your father, or would you have walked away for good? There's no right answer. I just want to know what you think. And if this story touched you, if it made you feel something, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications. I share stories like this every week. Real, raw, and shocking tales of family drama, betrayal, and the sweet taste of payback. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, no matter what you've been through, your story isn't over. The best chapters might still be ahead. I'll see you in the next one.